women speak with so much more than their words. It's like their body language, humans do, but especially women, because we are so, sensual in nature. And I know that you've gotten so tuned in with me where it's like my breath pattern will change and you're like, oh, that's a no, know, you just know. But that's what is so incredible. It's like, because a woman, I'll do when I'm doing couples coaching, and I'll watch the couple, and she's sending him all these body language signals. Either she's scared or uncomfortable, or he's not, whatever it is, and he's not getting it.
Welcome back, Ignite the King podcast. I am Michael Diamond. This is my beautiful co-host, Nanilea Diamond, and we are in a conversation of a 3-part series that we've been doing to kick off this new relationship in our podcasting career together. And we've been talking about recognizing a man in his kingship. He's in his king. And it started out with him and his knowing who he is, what he stands for, right relationship with power. And then we got into being in the era of the king in his life, that time period, moving from prince to king, and really stepping into that time in his life where he's listening to the children. He is being given wisdom from the elders, and he is moving that evolutionary baton forward. A beautiful part of the journey. And today we get into the third of these 3 topics, which is probably the juiciest of them all, and really the most relevant and practical for a man in the modern day, is how he treats women, how he treats his woman and all women. And man, this in and of itself will be a 3-part series, probably. No way we're going to cover all this in the next 30 minutes or so. But I do know that by listening, you're going to be transformed, as I always am. Welcome, babe. Good to see you. Good one.
I love you. Thank you.
So yes, as I recap the last 2, maybe give us a little preamble into what we are going to dive into today. This has been a key thing just in our relationship, how I help men in their lives now, in the feminine, in that relationship, and how we treat women.
Mm-hmm. And looking at what makes a king, and from a woman's eyes, how a man treats a woman tells you everything you need to know. It is a real temperature taker for who he be. And it's definitely something that women have sensors for, in not only how he's treating her, but how he treats all women. And I know that you teach a lot of this, and it can get into, just some basic things like chivalry. Like, for example, I, am on a shuttle going to the airport from the parking garage, and it's full. And there's a woman that walks onto the shuttle, and she's really pregnant. And there's all these men sitting down on the shuttle that don't stand up to give her a seat. The one man that stands up and offers her the seat, every woman in that shuttle knows that that's a certain caliber of man.
Can I jump in for 1 second? Because I bet you if you would ask any man if they would give up their seat for a pregnant woman, every one of them would say yes. And the difference here is, in my estimation, there's men out there just aren't even paying attention, not even aware of the feminine, especially a pregnant woman. As a man out there, you need to be on the lookout. You need to be the one that people want around, that is paying attention, that is scanning the environment, is making sure everyone's safe. That's part of our duty. That's part of that chivalry. Chivalry is just how it's expressed. But really, it's about nobility and honor, valor, courage, bravery, being able to step up when there needs to be a step up. And women feel that too. And giving a seat, it's a symbolic and important physical thing, but it's like, hey, I'm showing what this is how we play the game.
Yeah, I watched that. I mean, I sat on that bus watching that, and it brings me to tears to even think of that. There was only one man who stood up, and it's definitely, I felt like, wow, that's a temperature taker of where we're at, On the flip side, there's the to speak to what it looks like to be in the king is, to notice, like, hey, there's, someone who like you're not taking the seat first. You're making sure like, hey, how's the tribe? Like, how's everyone doing? And like ready to step up. It's that kind of just that feeling of like being at the ready as well for those kinds of situations, like not just looking in your phone or not distracted or not like you're aware that you're aware of your environment and you're in leadership of what happens there, even on a shuttle, you're keeping order.
Yeah. So many men want to understand women. I think the focus should be on learning just how to treat a woman.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to understand her. You know how to take care of her so she can take care of you, and vice versa, right? In the ways that we do. So I know so many men are trying to understand the feminine, understand their relationship, understand all these things.
Really? Right? I love that. That's cool too.
Yeah, I mean, they are asking the question, just using the
I
wrong
love
pathway
it.
to get the answer. Yeah, well,
And the same for
and
men.
I think it is coming from, and we mentioned on our last episode, it is coming from a real deep desire to serve. I know most of the men I meet out there are good men. They just don't have direction. They don't have leadership or mentorship or community or accountability or anything that really helps to shape that. And unfortunately, it didn't happen when they were kids or boys, and they haven't matured. They haven't come into this kingship. And there's a lot of men yearning for it and want to, and they're at least being aware. Unfortunately, a lot of times after it hasn't worked and it leads to divorce or it leads to all kinds of things. But more men are saying, hey, I don't want to make the same mistakes that people made before. How can I do this better now? Right. So, I mean, that's the essence of mentorship. And so the questions are being asked. But then I always say to men, it's not about figuring it out. I've actually banned that phrase from my group. Like, you're not allowed to say, I need to figure this out, because there's just no way that you're ever going to figure it out. And you need to employ different faculties in order to ultimately get that answer that you need. And that's the whole journey of the work and all of that. But men are asking the question. They do want to understand women. And the whole point of that rant was really to get back to, let's just learn how to treat a woman. What is it going to, what the energy you put out is the energy you get back. You're rewarded for the energy you put into the field. We say it so many different ways. And it's like the feminine needs to be honored and nurtured, and just as much as a man does.
Yeah. And it goes both ways, definitely, for treating a man. I think for women, we're just, there's a little bit more to it often, because women, how society treats women is what I think that we're still unbundling, and a man's like what he's contributing to in that, like for one, just women being objects, like, and men can be that too, but it's more so for women, and that, how a man treats a woman is like, she can feel it, if that's how he's seeing her. So that's an aspect of it too, where it's like that kind of like approach that's more immature, where there isn't a reverence for her. And
yeah, even in high level circles, men will make improper jokes. I've seen it. I've been around it. Even men that consider themselves men that take care of women still have that side. It can still be degrading to a point.
Yeah. And I feel like that's where, the king is sovereign in his being for what he allows his body and his consciousness to be a vessel for. And I see that as like a disease that lives in our culture that's poisoning all of us, really. And so it's like, are you going to let yourself run that disease and like spew it out with your friends and spew it out on her? You think, like, to me, it's more, I see it that way, where it's like, as a king, you don't allow that in your being. Like you are in command of your own nervous system and what patterns you do and don't run. And you wouldn't disgrace yourself or a woman. And you wouldn't, it's partly about her and just like wanting to love and honor the vessel that every child on this planet comes through, like to really get what woman is, and that all children are born through woman, and just she is life itself in that way. And that there's a reverence for life itself through your reverence for her. And then when there isn't that reverence, when there's that immaturity or that, I'm going to, there's, it can be called like the toxic masculine, I really see it as more like you're willing to run that toxicity through you. It's not you, it's not who you are. But if you don't have command of your being, or you have such a low standard for how you operate, that you're going to do that, it conditions it conditions the space around you. And like women can feel literally like in your aura, they can like feel that, or they can feel when you've let that standard drop and you've made comments, or you've, whatever it is. And with that,
what does that do to our children? What does that do to what we pass down to our sons and our daughters?
Yeah. We pass
the
them
impact of
disease.
that. Yeah.
And then the thing about it is it really impacts the trust within a relationship, and for a woman to surrender and to open herself to you in the deepest gates of her being, which is like, where you find those portals together to otherworldly realms. Like those gates will not open to you if you are not, standing there at the thresholds in a certain level of reverence and honor. Like she's not a woman who's in her queen, she's going to open to the degree that there is an honor, because she's not going to dishonor herself. She's not going to, allow that into the deep recesses of her being. And so when a man in the opposite is really the opposite is the man who's like the kind of the protector of the frequency that's held, protector of the standards. And it is energetic. It's not just, we're not in the day and age anymore where it's like protecting her from a lion that's chasing her or something,
Men need to be able to check their women in the street. It's a real thing. We need to be, embodying the warrior. We talk about it often in Ignite the King. We promote men learning self-defense and knowing how to protect themselves and having the confidence and the knowing and how to do that. Our relationship back years ago when I trained Krav Maga, it was because we were walking around the streets of San Francisco, and you need to feel safe. And frankly, at the time, I didn't feel like I had the confidence to do something. Not that I didn't care, I wouldn't stand up for us, but like at the same time, knowing what to do. And I've taken that training further along over the years. But it's an embodiment of that energy. Just like a woman can feel, when you're not in that, just a criminal can feel when a man is weak. A criminal can feel what, they go after, they're cowards. They go after the sick. They go after the weak. They go after the ones that can't take care of themselves. And even children that are, pulled into things like sex trafficking and that whole realm, criminals, they look for the father who is weak. Those are the kids that they go after. If there's a strong father present, they don't mess with it. So this embodiment is felt. I'm just bringing up those examples because not only is the feminine feeling it and her system responding, but literally every person you're interacting with, all the things that you're trying to keep outside your kingdom are responding to that embodiment of that king energy.
Yeah, and she feels it, that protector. But it can be that you're weak or that you're just distracted, like you're saying. You're just on your phone. You didn't even notice something happened,
Oh, yeah. Awareness takes care of most things. That's the number one thing I've learned in all of the self-defense training and situational awareness is fucking paying attention. Pay attention to your woman. Pay attention to your children. Pay attention to what's going on around you. Don't let the first signal be her walking out the door, because the question then becomes, when did she really walk out the door? You just weren't paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting feedback all the time.
Yeah.
But we are distracted. We are overwhelmed. We are, information overloaded, wisdom deprived, as we like to say.
And making the distinguishment that that's like a commercial society, but it's not something you need to take on. You're at choice. And I think that's where the real kingship comes in, of sovereignty of choice, where it's like that may be, busyness is the drug of the culture and distraction is where the trance, but I don't need to be in that movie. I'm going to choose my own way. But I would say too that there's with a woman, what I see a lot in speaking to men when I understand her is that there is really listening, like you were saying, like really paying like awareness, and then there's like listening, and women speak with so much more than their words. It's like their body language, their humans do, but especially women, because we are so, sensual in nature. And I know that you've gotten so tuned in with me where it's like my breath pattern will change and you're like, oh, that's a no,
Right.
you just know. But that's what is so incredible. It's like, because a woman, I'll do when I'm doing couples coaching, and I'll watch the couple, and she's sending him all these body language signals. Either she's scared or uncomfortable, or he's not, whatever it is, and he's not getting it. He's not getting the memos, and she'll look at me like, this is what's happening. Like I know you see what's happening.
Right,
he doesn't see
what's
what's
right there. Just said like 3 paragraphs of information. Like
I'm like, wow, he didn't get any of those files right there. Like he is not even. He's not in this movie. Like where,
now you know what I'm dealing with.
For him, like, okay, this is when she did that, this is what it meant. When she did that, this is what it meant. But it's like learning the language of each other.
A woman's not going to, you've told me this so many times. A woman's not going to tell you direct, right? It's tangential. It's not. It's never direct. It's not that. And when she is like, it can be for sure.
And oftentimes it's not. Oftentimes it is a dance. It is where it's like, rather than saying, will you turn on the light? I'll say like, it's getting dark in here, and like.
It's not a game. I don't want to mean it like that, but it's learning a language. And to me, that's a big part of intimacy is getting to know that level of somebody.
Yeah.
That level, we always, get sweet and cry about it, where, just like knowing that level of a person, those idiosyncrasies, those little habits, that's intimacy. That's enduring love. Those are those things you only share with that person. I know you've had experience with your grandparents where it's like, it was like telepathy. They just knew what they were thinking. And you're like, how do you know what he said? Oh, I know. And he didn't say anything. Yeah. It's like that level of connectedness. That's the goal, right? Like say, how do you treat a woman? It's like, well, in order to have that kind of relationship, you're going to have to really be dialed in your connection. And that's not to say there aren't disagreements or fights or challenges or stress or all those things. It's just actually those are the times that really deepen things even more.
Mm-hmm.
It's, one of the values of our family is like we work through things, right? That is so important because on the other side of that, it's like there's more depth, there's more love, there's more connection, more trust.
Yeah. I know we're talking about kingship, but like just in relationship, like, that's the intimacy of really learning each other, where it's like, and it goes both ways. Like you walk into the room and I can tell in your body language and your frequency and your facial expressions, like, okay, this is where he's at, but it's like, and
talking about, there's only one version of me.
And to respond to that, though, that's what gets so beautiful. Is like, wow, I didn't even need to say anything to speak to like, the epitome. We talked about like the things where, a man is not paying attention or not listening, but the epitome energy of it when it's really in its higher energetic is where he is. And this is where it gets so beautiful. And I've also witnessed this in the exact same couples. It just depends on, are you here, where it's like, you are so well versed in each other, you picked up on the signals. And it's not even that you've known each other a long time. Sometimes it can be that you are just very tuned in, and you're picking up the signals, but it's a communication and it's a real listening. But with my grandparents, you'd mentioned like they met when they were 16 and 17, and my grandmother lived to be, 101, almost 102. They were married over 80 years. It was just this incredible lifespan of a beautiful marriage. And I would go hang out with them when they were, in their later days. And it was incredible that they would not speak. They wouldn't need to say things. She would know by where he'd walk into the room and she'd know what he wanted to eat, and it wasn't the same thing every time. It was like by his energy, by how he was carrying himself. She really was that perceptive of where he was at. And I think it's even just staying curious with each other, where it's the curiosity of
the story. Wait, hold on. The story I remember was she answered a question for him and you turned to her and said, what? Like, oh, that's the answer to his question. And he said, he didn't even ask you a question. Or something like that. That's what I remember.
Yes, that happened too. Yeah. There was like telepathy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, to be that synced up with someone that tuned in.
And one thing I wanted to bring to the conversation too is like how a man treats a woman is also seen in recognizing that like she's a woman, she's not another bro. Like I've seen like sometimes I've had men that are like coming to
okay, we might need to break this one down a little bit. Bruh.
But it's like that kind of a thing too, where it's like treating you, in a way that recognizes, like that has that recognition of polarity, and that can be something that, he does with women in general across the board. But when you get into an intimate setting with a woman, then you won't have that polarity, you'll be a bra together, like. But I've seen that. I've had men come and like high five me in that energy. And I'm like, whoa, okay. Like this is, you're used to treating women that way. Like this is, there's no
little flower here. Not little, but since, you can't be slapping me, my pedals.
It's a little different. Yeah. To speaking to like what a king is, how I interpret it and experience it is that there's a difference, there's a difference in recognizing a woman versus, just like hanging with the guys.
I speaking of that, and I actually referenced him on our last episode. It was a very impactful presentation, but Cody at the Four Rooms event, he talked about how he treats women and his wife. And, he said, these are just my rules. And one of the rules was when he hugs another woman, he will only hug her with one arm, just out of respect for his wife. He won't fully embrace a woman that isn't his wife, and he uses one arm, and that's just what his rule is. And it really stuck out to me. And he's like, it may not be your rule, but to me, that's what my level of respect is. Like, all right, and just even define that, and to know what that is. It's like the thing with the bus. Like I said, I think most men would say yes, they would give up their seat, but they haven't decided ahead of time, or they aren't paying attention. Like you need to establish these rules of your kingdom. It's not when the situation arises. Yes, we learn things in the moment, but a man needs to live by a set of rules and codes. In IgKnight, we talk about the code of chivalry, to live a life that's noble and valiant and courageous, and what that means, and honor, and how you respect each other's homes, how you take care of, all kinds of ways that have been lost, frankly. I mean, that's what part of the ethos of IgKnight is, to bring that back to men, to remember like there is a way of being that a man is in society, right? In the real culture. And so, yeah. So I thought that was interesting that he talked about how he treats women and only hugging them with one arm.
I love that. Yeah. It really comes down to honor and respect, and all the different, like you're saying, codes of ethics that you have for yourself, and how you honor and how you respect is your own, but just that it has that vibe in it. Like you are honoring, you are respecting right now.
And it's been predetermined, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I know I take men through that process of values, of their rules, boundaries. You talk about it, standards, boundaries, and upper limits, right? It's like you have to define those things, right? I know you often talk with boundaries. It's like, well, you can't get mad at someone for not enforcing a boundary that you never defined. Like, you have to define them. You have to communicate them. You have to enforce them. But most people, it's living in their own head, and they never express it or define it. And then that's the wobble, that happens. I think that you talk about a lot for men, where it's like, well, you got to know what the fuck you stand for. You got to define that shit so you can actually show up that way and not get wobbled in the moment when there's a storm coming, whether it's from your wife or girlfriend or work or business or just somewhere out in the world.
Yeah, your values. And oftentimes it's through having a boundary crossed or crossing a boundary that you learn where it exists,
Right. Well, then it becomes traumatic, right? And what we've been wanting to say, one of the messages we're getting through is with rites of passage. It's like, you need to be challenged, but not in a traumatic way, right? You need to have challenge. You need to grow. You need to define these things. You need to go through those places, but not through trauma. So many things are created because of that. Yeah, we have a new boundary because the line was crossed, but how many times do we have to learn that lesson until we actually define our own boundaries, our own rules, our own guardrails? That's part of being a king. It's like you're not at the whim of everything. And mostly you're learning that because you've been through it, right? So yeah. And how do we help others get the wisdom of that, i.e. our kids, without having the trauma and the wounding from it?
Mm-hmm.
Like unbound energy. And we talk about your work is my work and things like that, where it's like, I don't have to have the trauma to get the wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Why this podcast exists. Like, hear this, man. Like, this is how you treat a woman. Don't go through the trauma or traumaing someone else because you didn't know.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the beautiful things about having like your group with Ignite the King and being in mentorship and with other men who are in the same commitment and kingship, is that you don't have to make all the mistakes yourself. You don't have to learn by crossing. You cannot, and that's what we're designed for. It's just gotten broken and people are isolated and all this stuff.
You
and
need
the
to be in the
wisdom
right room. Yeah, you got to find yourself in the right room, around the right people, doing the right work. It's been proven over and over again. It's like, yeah, you don't have to make the same mistakes over and over again. Learn from others. No one that achieved anything great did it alone, ever.
Mm-hmm. And to seek it out. I think you have this, this idea. I think a lot of the time I see with men is there's that, again, that like posturing where you've already got it figured out, and to really be in humility and say, I want to actually seek out a place to grow my mastery in this area. And it actually matters, because there's so much investing yourself in things that, are like business focused or, different areas, but to actually say, I want to develop myself and who I be in as a king, that's a totally different decision and focus and a mastery, like to get that there's a mastery to it. It's not just like, oh, I'm it already. It's like there's such an art to it. And to even hear like what you just said about the one arm, it's like, okay, now you can take that, make it your own in your own way, but it gives you that idea and that kind of template to work with. And it's so beautiful to see the men that are up and coming that are saying, hey, I want the mentorship. And then they are like excelling and they are creating these incredible relationships and these incredible marriages and they were really proactive about it. And you can learn and you can develop. It's not that hard.
No.
It just takes, prioritizing it, doing it. And when you see a man who's in his king, you can tell that he's developed how to treat a woman. Like he has actually put some investment into like, I want to master this. I want to be really, I want for myself to be the man that shows up this way in, honor and in respect. And there may be some things to learn here, and I may want to consult with other men and mentors and see what that is, and then try it on and see what it feels like to do that. And I think what I find in just what I observe and I hear in relationships is that, and I've heard actually from men in Ignite when I've come to share with them, and then they practice some of the things that we go through, is they say, it not only works like in my relationship and in my life, but I really love who I am as I do this. And that becomes part of the fulfillment, is like, wow, it's an upgrade in who I experience myself to be. Like, it's not even about doing it for her. It's not even about the outcome that I get out there. It's like who I be up levels. And that's for me. Like I get, and it's just so beautiful to see how that works.
Yeah. Be the thing that you want to give. I always say to men, like, it's the thing that you thought was missing. That's what you need to give. It comes back to you in that way. And yeah, men do feel good about who they become and who they are when they're acting that way. I think what all this ultimately comes down to is like just getting in right relationship with nature, getting right relationship with our dynamics, and doing that in a healthy way. Right. I mean, this is what this all is. And then learning the tactical and the skill sets to implement it. But doing so from the place of like genuine, like, I want to honor this other being. It's ironic to me that the person that is seemingly the closest to us, i.e. our significant other, is the person that we honestly treat the worst out of all the people we know in our lives. Usually they're the ones at the brunt of a lot of our energy. We're not like spewing it out all over. Some people are, of course, but we wind up taking things out on the people that we love the most.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a place we need to bring way more honor. I think some men are just in complete denial, and they're probably not the ones listening to this. And the ones that are like, yeah, I'm either doing it and keep going. If this has served you, that's awesome. And for the man that's either just becoming aware of this or is maybe in the earlier parts of his journey where it's like, cool, I need guidance here. I need mentorship. I need to know what to do. I just say that these downloads, these podcasts are a way to just like let it get into your nervous system, let it do its work. That's what this transmission, that's what these podcasts are for. So this actually brings to a completion our 3-part series of a man and his kingship and what it looks like to be in his king. We covered a lot. Is there anything you want to share as we're going to be talking about a lot more things over a lot more episodes, but we definitely want to bring the collar around these 3 episodes. Is there anything you want to close with?
Just that I really offer that there's a renaissance happening where to even recognize that it's a desirable focus and place to invest in your life is in the art and mastery of love, and I see that more and more emerging as the game's up in a way. Like the illusion isn't paying out to just chase false carrots and do money status. And I think there's just enough awareness around that that's not actually what matters in the end. And that's actually not fulfilling. And there's a resurgence of the remembrance of like just being in love and being in a place in your life where you want more, and that comes again to like having the boldness and the courage to stand in the desire of like, I want to be wildly in love. Like I want to experience what that is for both men and women, for people, and that then it becomes like, wow, there's an art and a mastery to this. It's not just happenstance. And that I see really beginning to take place and starting, and there's a momentum to it now, and it's something to really consider, like how much am I bringing energy to that, and how much do I actually really want that, and standing in the desire of like, actually, I really want that. I want to have that experience in this lifetime. I want to see what's possible. I know in our relationship, our love, like it's not just what we do, it's that we share it, it's like we experience things twice, like it happens and then it happens when we like celebrate it together. And the richness and the depth comes from being in our love as we're doing the thing, not just doing the thing.
Presence. Well, thank you. Another beautiful sharing, powerful transmissions, more questions percolating up, but a lot of value delivered in this 3-part series. I'm excited for our podcast to continue and to share more episodes together, deep dive in all these these topics around relationship that are just so important. I mean, I hear in real-time feedback from the men in our Ignite the King Brotherhood all the time. This is just of the highest value. It's the most important thing in our life, our relationship. It just flat out is. It affects and impacts everything else that we as men create in our lives, from our families to our businesses to our mission in the world. So we're going to dive more into that. And for those men out there that feel called and want to take the next step and attend one of our Ignite the King immersions, our next one's coming up in the middle of May. We're accepting applications for that now. You can schedule a call. That link will be in the show notes, of course. And also like, share, subscribe this episode. Look forward to the next one. Aho.